So many of you ask us in the Facebook group about what you can all do to help manage your menopause symptoms if you can't or perhaps don't want to take HRT. And there are also loads of you who are on HRT who are looking for advice on perhaps how to optimize your diet and how to implement a really healthy lifestyle to protect your immediate and longer term health and well-being. And look, it's getting darker and colder now, and the festive season's just around the corner. And I know firsthand myself how easy it is to overindulge and comfort eats and the impact that can have on our overall sort of well-being and mood, and perhaps a few regrets in the new year. So look, to prevent you all falling prey to those sort of new year, new me culture, I thought I'd invite today into the Latte Lounge this lunchtime the fabulous nutritionist and yoga teacher, LeNise Brothers, who's going to share some of her wisdom and some top tips on how to protect ourselves both mentally and physically as we step into winter, whilst, you know, still ensuring that we all have a really enjoyable festive season. And I'm going to share some time at the end if any of you have got any questions. So LeNise, we got there in the end. Thank you so much for joining me and everyone else today in the lounge. Now, LeNise, before we start, I thought the best thing to do is to give everyone a little bit of background information about you, if that's okay. So LeNise, as I said, is a registered nutritionist and hormone health expert, and she's worked with hundreds of women through their menstruating years and throughout perimenopause, menopause, and beyond. And she has a private practice called Eat, Love, Move, and runs group programs with Parlour, which is a Holland and Barrett women's health company. And she's also the host of the Period Story podcast, which aims to break taboos around menstrual and hormone health, especially during these perimenopause, menopause, and post-menopause years too. And she's the author of her first book, You Can Have a Better Period, which was released in March 2022. So LeNise, as I said before, a lot of women complain of feeling a little bit low and sad during these winter months, even if they have perhaps controlled their menopause symptoms with HRT. So I wondered if you could start by telling us a little bit about, you know, why this might be and what we can all do to help with this feeling of blueness.
Yeah, so it's just a really, really interesting question that I am getting asked a lot at the moment. And I think what a lot of us forget is that we really thrive in the sun and we thrive in light. We synthesize vitamin D from the sun. And so vitamin D is a really important hormone. It's not a vitamin, it's actually a hormone that when we make when we're exposed to the sun. And then we think about the clocks, they've just changed. So they've just gone back. So I always have to do that, spring forward, fall back. I'm Canadian, so that's why I say fall sometimes. And we have gained an hour of sleep, but we've also lost some light. And as we go further and further into the winter months, we get less exposure to light. And actually of course I'm generalizing here, but we tend to go outside less. And so there's a big conversation I'm having with my clients is making sure that they kind of cover some of the basics around getting enough light, because light has this huge impact on our mood. So when you wake up in the morning, open the blinds and look outside, even on a day like today when I'm in London and it's not very nice. It's raining really hard where I am, but you can still get that exposure to the light in the eyes. And what that does, it tells the brain that it's time to jump into the day. And it has a really powerful effect on setting our mood and helping to support serotonin levels. And serotonin is one of our happy hormones. And then also doing things like making sure that you go outside. And I know a lot of us are working from home now. And so there can be this tendency, unless you absolutely have to go out, maybe you do the school run or something like that, just to stay indoors. But really making the effort to leave your house, go out, even if it's for a short 5-minute walk, because again, that exposure to light, even on a dark, rainy day, being outdoors is really, really powerful for setting our mood. And, it is a bit of a kind of, can feel a little bit like a bit of a truism, like, get out, get into the fresh air, but it really can make a difference. And of course, these are very, very simple tips, but often it's these simple things that we do forget, and we tend to go think that complicated solutions are the best ones, but they're simple and they work. And there's reasons for those. And then just going back to what I was saying about vitamin D, during the winter months, it's really important to supplement with vitamin D, because between the end of October and the end of February, we don't make any vitamin D from the sun because of the way that the earth is positioned. We can't generate enough vitamin D from the sun. So the NHS recommends that everyone in the UK supplements with vitamin D. However, you don't want to do this kind of like willy-nilly. You want to make sure you're being smart. If you haven't had your vitamin D levels checked recently, to go to your GP, get them checked so that you can take the right levels for you. If you don't want to go to your GP, there's a test that you can get. It's an NHS test. It costs £29. And you go to vitamindtest.org.uk, and it's very simple, very efficient.
And you often sort of hear that vitamin D is not just, good for lifting mood or the importance, because we're not absorbing it from natural daylight, but also the link to things like bone health and osteoporosis. So I think so. I guess there's so many different benefits. But one of the questions a lot of women ask in the group, and someone's actually just asked me now, is how do you know? There's so many different sort of supplements there, and how do you know what's a good one, and what's the recommended amount that sort of your average midlife woman should be taking?
Yeah, that's such a great question. The short answer is that everyone's different. So what works for your friend isn't necessarily going to work for you, because we're all physiologically different. We've got different things going on, different responses to the way that we manage blood sugar levels. Maybe we sleep differently. There's lots of reasons. So ideally you want to work with a practitioner who can do the appropriate testing, see what's going on with your vitamins, your minerals, check what's going on with your hormones, and just even check your thyroid. I'm pointing there because that's where the thyroid is, just to then be able to make recommendations that are appropriate for you and for what's going on with your life. Having said that, I think there are some kind of brilliant basics that everyone would benefit from. So we've already talked about vitamin D. And then magnesium is a really, really interesting one for women in midlife. We often think about magnesium in terms of, if your muscles are sore, maybe you take an Epsom salt bath, which is fantastic. But we also can think about magnesium and its benefit for sleep. I know that is a very big issue for a lot of women in midlife: sleep disturbances, not getting deep enough sleep. And magnesium is a really powerful mineral that, if the research tells us that about 75% of us are deficient in this mineral. And if you overlay the high levels of stress that undoubtedly many of us are experiencing, we could all benefit from taking a magnesium supplement. So the type of magnesium that you take matters. So if you're just looking for a really great all-around magnesium that will help with sleep, that will help with blood sugar management. Then magnesium glycinate is a really, really great one. If you have some digestive issues, so specifically if you're dealing with constipation, then magnesium citrate is a really, really interesting form of magnesium for those issues. So, if you can go into Holland Barrett if you have one close to you, and they have practitioners there who you can get good advice from. But definitely those are kind of really two kind of foundational supplements that I think any midlife woman would benefit from.
Sure. And you talk about getting out in nature, which is obviously so important. And that's, let's sort of have a look at things like exercise. Why is it so important that, especially at this time in our life and through these perimenopause years and into menopause and beyond, that we should all be moving a lot more?
Yeah, I think exercise is such an interesting one, because if you've thinking back to this time where you may have come up, so like the 80s and 90s, it was very much about no pain, no gain, Jane Fonda aerobics, all of that kind of, really punishing yourself, exercise as a form of punishment. And it's really interesting to be able to reframe the way that you look at exercise to also thinking about movement and the movement that you do throughout the day. Sure, you might go to the gym and do 30 minutes to an hour of exercise, but what about when you take the dog for a walk? Maybe you're still doing the school run, and you do that on foot. Maybe you have stairs in your house or your flat and you're walking up and down those stairs, or you have stairs in your office. All of that really incremental movement throughout the day really makes a difference. So if you have like a fitness band or Apple Watch or something like that, you can actually see the effects of that incremental movement throughout the day. And it really adds up. And then I was actually really interesting because I was having a conversation with a client about this exact topic this morning, and really thinking about how we can find joy in movement and joy in exercise, and really moving away from forcing. If you might think, oh, I have to do a HIIT class, or you don't have to do anything. Find ways to make movement really joyful and fun, because if you really enjoy going for a walk, then do that. And you're knowing that walking is a really, really powerful way to support the health of your bones. It's a really powerful way to support cardiovascular health, the health of your muscles, the health of your brain. So find the joy is the kind of message I want to kind of leave you with regards to movement and exercise.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we're looking at this whole sort of holistic way of feeling better in perimenopause and menopause. And I know firsthand that it just what you talked about in the 80s, it was like, oh, I've got to go to keep fit and I've got to make sure I'm doing this 3 times a week minimum and everything. And then I look at this weekend, for example, and I've been away with a couple of girlfriends, and I really enjoyed the exercise we did, which was we found some local classes to do and we did some walking. And I think the act of doing it with other women, you're automatically outside, which is great. So you're getting your vitamin D and exercise, you're laughing and you're talking, which raises that kind of, the happy hormones. And so, and suddenly I look back on this weekend and think, that wasn't punishing at all. That was actually good fun. I enjoyed it. So, you're spot on. It's about doing things which bring us joy. And as you say, it's not just, I've got to exercise. It's an effort. Now, look, going hand in hand with that, of course, and as a nutritionist, I'm sure this is something you talk about all the time, is obviously finding a balanced diet. And again, looking back in the 80s, we were brought up with this whole, low fat and counting calories. And that's just had quite a detrimental impact on all of us, hasn't it? So what do you discuss with your clients? What do you think helps women to support their hormone health, you know, from a nutrition point of view?
Yeah, so I think it's coming from this mindset of thinking about calories and restriction, like how do we make ourselves smaller? What I love this idea of reframing the way that you look at how you eat. So thinking about what you can add in rather than what you're taking out. So rather than thinking, well, I must reduce carbs, I must reduce the amount of sugar that I eat. Thinking about, okay, well, I'm about to make this beautiful lunch for myself. What am I going to add in that is going to help me feel great about what I'm eating, to help me feel really nourished and also be really tasty? So I kind of think about it like a tick list. So, okay, I am going to put together, like, so what am I going to personally have for lunch today? I will probably I have some soup in the fridge, and that's got lots of vegetables in it. So lots of fiber. I will throw in some greens. I have some spinach that I'll probably wilt and throw in there. What am I going to do about protein? So I have some shredded chicken, some leftovers that I will just, I'll warm up and I'll throw in there. And then I know that when I made the soup, they used some olive oil. So that's the fat. So really thinking about this tick list of really high quality protein, healthy fats. Yes, I mentioned fats. Fats are really important. Fiber, and then greens. So it's a kind of nutrition approach that looks at what we're adding in rather than another way of restricting ourselves and just adding to our mental load. And that's really powerful because those 4 elements allow us to add in the nutrients that are really important for what we need in midlife.
I absolutely love that, because it was always that thought of, well, I can't have that and I can't have that and I can't have that, and then you end up feeling really miserable and cold and low and sort of jealous of what everyone else is eating when you go out. So this idea of actually adding everything in, and it's self-care, isn't it? It's looking after us and putting us first. I mean, are there any sort of menopause friendly ingredients that you love and advise us to take that perhaps will help women with particular symptoms or overall symptom relief, especially things like hot flushes, joint pain, things that perhaps have anti-inflammatory properties as well?
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting to think about when you're adding these foods in, thinking about it in 2 different ways. So how can you make your plate as bright as possible? So really colorful, because all of the colors in fruits and vegetables, even at this time of year, they contain nutrients, so antioxidants that are anti-inflammatory. So anti-inflammatories support our bone health, they support our joints, they also support our mental health and our immune system. So this idea of eating the rainbow at maybe not every meal, but maybe 1 meal a day, really thinking what's a new vegetable or fruit that I can add in, or a new color that I can add onto my plate. And then thinking about other kinds of anti-inflammatory food. You have oily fish. So we're in the UK, we live on an island surrounded by water, and there's a lot of really beautiful types of oily fish that we can access. So like wild salmon, sardines, herring. And even if you can't get fresh versions, if you say you go down to M&S, you can get a really great wild salmon in tin, and it has bones in it. And when you eat the bones, like perfectly safe to eat, they're not going to hurt you. They have vitamin D in it. So, there's that additional benefit of supporting your bones. It's anti-inflammatory, and you get those healthy fats that are so powerful for the health of our brain. We need that extra support in midlife because of the lack of estradiol.
Mm. And well, what about things like turmeric? Because that's something that people always mention in the group here.
Yeah, turmeric, I absolutely love. I think it's such a, I mean, it's such a great thing to add into as a seasoning because it's really brightly colored. And then you've got curcumin, which is the active compound in turmeric. So really, really powerful anti-inflammatory. There's been a lot of research on it. So really helpful for supporting joint health. So if you have arthritis, that could be a really interesting supplement to add in. But with turmeric, you want to make sure that you're eating it or drinking it, if you're adding it to, like, you're having a latte with something that has fat in it and maybe a little black pepper, because that increases the absorption of the curcumin.
So interesting. Well, I'll have a turmeric latte later.
Yeah.
I mean, look, this for whole festive season coming up, obviously we all overindulge, and not just with food, but alcohol. I mean, what is your sort of feeling about alcohol? Not just this time of year, but all year round when it comes to, you know, menopause symptoms. What would your advice be to people watching?
Yeah, this is definitely an interesting time of year when it comes to alcohol intake. So I personally don't drink myself. I stopped drinking about 5 years ago, and it's been really interesting being in the UK, where, you know, I'm, as I mentioned earlier, I'm Canadian, so there's a whole different culture around drinking in the UK, and then navigating that as a non-drinker, and there's a kind of judgment that can be attached to not drinking. Oh, why are you pregnant? What's going on? And people don't understand. So I think it's, you know, it's obviously a very personal choice, but just being really honest about the effect that alcohol has on you, because as we get older, we have less of the enzyme that helps us break down alcohol. And so this is where hangovers can get really, really, like, much worse as we move, like, 40s, 50s, and beyond. And there was a really interesting article in the Times, I think it was last week or the week before, about anxiety, you know, hangovers plus anxiety, that kind of portmanteau word, and how the authors, the writers in the article were talking about as they got older, it was getting worse. You know, they would have a couple of drinks, so, you know, one hour drinking equals like a whole day of anxiety. And if this is going on for you, you have to really, I would encourage you to take a look and be really honest about the effect of alcohol on you. And not saying you shouldn't drink, but maybe take more of a mindful approach to drinking. So instead of getting a large glass of wine, because we know those large glasses, you know, if you have 3 large glasses, that's basically a bottle of wine, which sometimes, you know, you make that link and you're like, oh my gosh. Maybe getting a small glass of wine, drinking a little bit slowly, having conversations with your friends about how you feel after you drink, and just starting to kind of open up the conversation, because there can be a little bit of a taboo about drinking less, especially around the holidays. But when we start to have these conversations, we can take some of the weight away from this topic and make it a little less taboo.
Yeah, because it's interesting. I don't drink either since I started my perimenopause symptoms 6 years ago. And I know that they, you know, can make symptoms like hot flushes worse. They can make insomnia worse. And women get into this vicious circle or cycle, don't they? Where, you know, often they're drinking because they are feeling more anxious, and it kind of calms the anxiety. And it's really, well, once you sort of realize that perhaps heightened anxiety is due to your hormones, you know, I think it'll sort of click in that actually I'm actually making things perhaps a bit worse, not better. Do you ever recommend swapping for other drinks that you prefer, that when others are drinking wine? Do you have any favorites at all?
To me personally,
non-alcoholic recommendations.
yeah, so I love seedlip, and that's actually becoming more widely available. So you can get them, and no one has to know if you're not drinking, because it looks like you're drinking this fabulous cocktail, or it just looks like you're drinking a gin and tonic or a vodka tonic, and you can get them to make it really exciting, adding garnishes, maybe a slice of grapefruit, or lemon. And they have different varieties, and I just love it.
Yeah, I mean, you get all those sparkly soft drinks like kombucha, which is definitely much kinder to your gut and body and mind. Now, another part of this whole sort of holistic look at us sort of feeling well and health and well-being is stress. I know we are all very stressed in midlife because we are juggling, perhaps we've got children, or perhaps we've got aging parents, and all those responsibilities of running a home, your own job and relationships. And, can we just have a little look at stress? What are your sort of tips to your own clients when, stress is really impacting on symptoms and general well-being?
Yeah, stress is such a big one because it can be really, the effects of it can be cumulative, and you can actually be more stressed than you realize. And it's that classic thing of you go on holiday, or maybe you have a break. So Christmas comes up, and then you just feel like you're absolutely crashing because you just release from all of that stress. And then your immune system kind of says, because stress suppresses the immune system. And so the way I like to talk to my clients about stress is to really look at those little moments that you can take throughout the day, to kind of release some of the air. So like release some of the tension. And so it's kind of like, instead of looking at like, oh, I'm going to do some yoga to release my stress, it's, I've just finished this meeting. I'm going to take a few deep breaths to try to calm my nervous system, try to shift it out of fight or flight. I'm going to, instead of, if you're working from home, instead of going from Zoom to task, take a moment and, look outside, just take in the green, because even just looking at a tree, that green has a really powerful effect on our brains. And so breathing is really powerful, as I just mentioned, and really looking at the way you breathe can make a really big difference. Say, instead of that shallow breath that a lot of us do, where we're breathing from our chest, we're taking a deep breath in through our nose and out through our nose, and make it more of a deeper breath that comes in that affects the diaphragm and the belly. And that can make a really, really big difference. I mean, if that all sounds like too much, like another thing on your to-do list, just sigh. And I know that sounds so weird because sighing can be so annoying, but it is actually a bit of a release if you just and just, it really makes a difference.
Oh, good, because I'm often sighing whenever my teenage kids walk into a room. So yeah. So yes, it is a good release though, isn't it? Absolutely. I mean, we talk a lot about, not just on the Facebook group, but on our website and other social channels, about that kind of mindfulness, meditative stage, even if it's just going off to sort of read a book in a quiet corner, or just anything that's more about you, is, sort of self-care and just sort of breathing time, and making self-care a priority, because as I said, we're always putting everyone else first, and sometimes it's actually very healthy for us to take ourselves out of the stressful situations just for a few minutes. I had a few emails in before this Facebook Live from women who can't join us because obviously it's during lunchtime, and and just before I ask you their questions, just for anyone watching now, This is being recorded. I'm sorry we started a little bit late. There's always tech issues at the last minute. But this is being recorded and we will share it on our website. So if anyone wants to watch back, if you didn't catch us live, you know, that's going to be available to you. But one of our members, LeNise, has said that she is herself on HRT, and although it's helping with some of her symptoms, she's there are other areas of her life that she still doesn't feel great. And she's just wondering, if she was to start a sort of supplementation routine as well as looking at her own diet and exercise, is this something she should discuss with her doctor first, or can they sit well together? You know, so if she's on HRT, can she still take things like vitamin D and other supplements like, you know, magnesium, which you mentioned?
Yeah, definitely. It's always worth it to check in with your doctor, but most supplements work very well with HRT.
Yeah. Okay. And just so everyone knows, obviously LeNise is not a doctor. She's here as a nutritionist. But what else? You know, I know you work at Parlour, which is a Holland and Barrett company. Are there any other sort of supplements in particular? If women have optimized their diet, you know, through food, natural foods and drink, and there's still just a few tweaks that need, is there anything else that you can recommend that would be helpful?
Yeah, so vitamin C is a really interesting one. So there's a form of vitamin C called liposomal vitamin C, and it's normally packaged as a liquid. So you have it's like it comes in a sachet. I just happen to have this here. And you kind of take it in and with a bit of water. And what's great about vitamin C is that it works really powerfully on the adrenals. And the adrenals are those glands that sit on top of our kidneys. They're very small. And this is where we make estrogen, which is the dominant form of estrogen after the menopause. And so if we take vitamin C, we support the adrenals. It's also really, we support that form of estrogen, but it's also a really powerful way of supporting the stress response. And then additionally, vitamin C is really powerful for helping to manage hot flashes. So night sweats and hot flashes. So it's a really, really great all-rounder, but I would say that you don't want to just take any vitamin C. You really want to go for a liposomal vitamin C. So it means that the vitamin C is packaged with a fat to make it easier for the body to absorb.
Yeah, I mean, and also I guess as we're heading into winter, a lot of more sort of coughs and colds, and all of us feeling a little bit run down as we go into flu season. So, you know, I think vitamin C is definitely helpful. I know I was always told to try and eat loads of oranges, but I think there's only so much you can actually cope with in a day, isn't there? And eat. So, another question that's just come in, collagen. Now, a lot of women here, you see lots of adverts on television, and in our Facebook group is one of the #1 questions, actually. These sort of things, sort of collagen drinks and supplements, is there a way of us getting collagen naturally, or do you think we all need to be supplementing it, and why? Why are some of us deficient in it, and, you know, what does collagen do, really?
So collagen is an amino acid. So it's one of the amino acids that makes up protein. And so one of the foundations of a midlife nutrition program is protein, as along with the other three areas that I mentioned earlier. And so if you're getting enough protein, you're automatically getting those amino acids like collagen that support the health of the skin. Adding in vitamin C is another way to support the body and the skin's process of making collagen, which, of course, as we know, reduces as we get older. I personally don't think it hurts to take a collagen supplement. I do use one personally. I have a collagen powder that I will just add to a smoothie, or if I'm making like a matcha latte, I will just throw that in there, because I just think it's not going to hurt. and at very minimum, it's some extra protein. But what I would say is that you don't want to spend like, lots and lots of money on these supplements because they can be really expensive. So you don't want to get the cheapest one, but you want to just be a bit judicious about the money that you're spending on them.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, and on that note, it can be so confusing, can't it, for women to know, what they should be taking, what they shouldn't be taking, how much, how little, is it going to interfere with other things I'm on? And we don't want to be walking around just sort of juggling all these supplements in our body and not sure what's doing what. So but before I just ask the group if there are any questions for those who are watching, what would be your sort of top tips for a woman who's watching now who perhaps is just not feeling great for whatever reason? What would an optimized sort of lifestyle look like for you?
Yeah, so I would talk about going back to those kind of brilliant basics. So really looking at sleep, and I know that sleep can be a massive issue, but thinking about what you're doing, like what you do from when you wake up sets the scene for a better sleep. So you're getting enough light. And then as you get into the evening, optimizing the light around you. So you're making sure you're not in a brightly lit environment. You're giving your brain the opportunity to make enough melatonin so you can go into a deeper sleep that evening. So really thinking about how much you're on your phone in the evening and your laptop, and your tablets, all of these little devices, they emit blue light, and that reduces the amount of melatonin, which is our sleep hormone. And that affects not only how we get to sleep, but how deeply we sleep. So really looking at that kind of really looking at sleep, the environment that you sleep in, making it really comfortable, really inviting, so that you're doing everything you can to set the scene for a better night's sleep. I know that sleep can be an issue. I'm not denying that, but just kind of doing everything you can in that area. Then we have movement, as we talked about before, exercise and movement, and making sure that throughout the day, you're getting up, you're moving around, and then making it joyful, making sure you're eating enough. So eating enough protein, enough healthy fats, and making your meals joyful as well. It's really lovely to look forward to what you're eating and thinking about what you're adding into your plate, and really making eating a time for not only nourishment, but a time of pleasure. I think that can be missing from the way that we think about food. You're not paying penance when you're eating lunch or dinner. It should be I'm really enjoying what I'm eating, and I've made this for myself, or someone has made this for me, and that isn't that great. And then just those moments throughout the day to release the tension. So taking a deep breath, sighing, and then finally community. Having your community, having someone that will really listen to you and really hear what you're saying is so powerful.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you ended on that, because connection and community, I mean, obviously that's why the Lassie Lounge exists, because I think, when I started it 6 years ago, I felt very alone. Nobody was really talking about perimenopause and menopause, let alone sort of leaving jobs and just feeling really rubbish. And so I just think it's brilliant that there's just so many of us now talking about this, removing the stigma, kind of informing and empowering each other with this brilliant information like you've just done today, so you just don't feel alone or isolated. And obviously these online communities are fabulous, but if you can, you know, do one better and actually meet up in person, I think, you know, I think you'll all feel a lot better. So I'm just asking, while I'm asking the group on Facebook, if anyone watching now wants, we have a couple of minutes left. I know it's your lunch break, so it might not be the best time, but if you want to ask LeNise any questions, or you would like me to ask, please put in the comments. Or after this Facebook Live ends, you are welcome to email us at hello@lattielounge.co.uk, and we will put you in touch and get some answers for you that way. So LeNise, where can everyone find out more about you, about your book, about your podcast, obviously about Parlour and Holland and Barrett, if they would like some more personal support?
Yeah, so I have a private practice, as you mentioned earlier, where I work with women one-to-one. I also work with Parla, which is a Holland and Barrett company, and we have group programs and workshops and master classes for different issues around women's health. So perimenopause, menopause, also PCOS and endometriosis. And so those can continue to be issues in perimenopause and menopause. So that's been really rewarding to be able to run those programs. And then, of course, I have my podcast, which is called Period Story, which I would love for you to come on. So I'll talk to you about that separately. And it's basically an opportunity to reduce some of the taboos around talking about menstruation and menstrual health, because I thought, why, you know, we hear so much about birth stories, but why aren't we hearing the story, like first period stories? So we're in our 6th season now, and that's been really fun. And finally, I have my book, which was released in March, called You Can Have a Better Period.
Well, listen, I mean, this has been brilliant and really helpful. And there's lots of women who are watching and thinking, well, you know, my periods are sort of slowing down or stopping, or like myself, I had a hysterectomy. But when I look back over my entire, I guess, fertility journey, there's a lot of light bulb moments going off. I was chatting this week about the gender pain gap report that had just come out. And so many of us sort of think pain is normal, period pain is normal. And then, like myself again, you know, I had PCOS and lots of problems with my pregnancies, whether it was cesareans or miscarriage. And I think when we, you know, if we can sort of empower the younger generation, I have a 25-year-old daughter, to know what's normal, what is expected perhaps in the future, and being prepared along the way, then I think we'll all have, you know, better hormonal health right the way through, and we're not just sort of focusing on the beginning and the end, but that bit in between. So LeNise, I'm really excited to obviously personally read your book, and you know, obviously I'd be delighted to come on your podcast, but I think more importantly today, it's been really helpful having you here, so that women realize that there is a lot we can do ourselves, isn't there, to feel better in this time, and to enjoy life, and not be miserable about sort of not being able to eat or do much. But thank you for joining us, and I hope everyone has a very sort of happy festive period, and you know, just enjoy life, because life is short, and let's live life to the full in a healthy way.
Exactly, completely agree. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, pleasure. And sorry about the tech at the beginning, but we got there in the end. And thank you everyone for watching. Again, as I said, email us at hello@lattielounge.co.uk if you have any other questions. So take care everyone, and be well, and have a good festive period. Thanks, LeNise.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Take care. Bye.
Bye.